Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of At the Wheel with me, Joe White, the High Speed Rodeo Substack, Tu Lee, Sino Auto Insights. Um, yeah, there's a lot going on. I just finished my Substack for the week and let it off with a long take on kind of the trials of the German automakers now that Donald Trump wants to swat them over the head with a 25% tariff. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But two is just back from China and the Beijing Auto Show and some other adventures. And I think a lot of our episode is going to be about what two learned on his spring vacation in China. Your vacation, right?
Yeah, my
Well, welcome
annual
back. Welcome back.
pilgrimage.
Your annual
Thanks, Joe.
pilgrimage. Yeah, welcome back. Look, there's a lot. I mean, I know, because you've been writing about it, talking about it. There's a lot to cover. Let's start with the Beijing Motor Show, the show, and and the events around the show. What were some of your takeaways about what's going on? What was going on at the show? What the Chinese automakers were showing, what the Western automakers had, if anything, and then we'll go from there. But let's just talk about, like, if I went to the show, what would my takeaways be? What did you see?
So let me start by saying before the show, there's some shows.
Yeah, there's the show, and then there's the show, right?
Yes. So many brands have individual events in order to unveil and not share the spotlight. So
Right.
companies like CATL, Cadillac, XPeng, Neo, they all had pre-events before Friday being media day and then Saturday being media and industry day, where they have the 20-minute booth media press events that you're used to, chasing around, traveling around.
Yeah.
So my China day started in Pudong Airport in Shanghai, where I effectively had a 4-hour layover before I got on a plane
Mhm.
to get to Guangzhou for an XPeng event, which they were inviting media and analysts, international media and analysts. And we saw some KOLs from YouTube. We saw Steve Levine from The Information, friend of the show, friend of
Mhm.
ours. And so they really, really wanted to show off their shiny new toy, the Guangzhou headquarters that they had just rebuilt or just built, but also talk about how they've leaned into technology. They're a technology group now. And
Mhm.
so officially they changed their name from XPeng Motors, I want to say, in Chinese to XPeng Group. So I equate that to, remember back when Apple went from Apple Computer to Apple Inc.?
Apple
Think of
Inc.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, will XPeng have the luck of having that same trajectory as Apple did once it changed its name?
Yeah. I don't know.
That's
If
tough.
you'd asked me in 2011 if Apple was going to be the Apple we know today, I'd have said I don't think so. Right. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So highlights from the XPeng trip, and I was only there a day, and I flew right back to Beijing the next day. They showed off their eVTOL. They showed their eVTOL factory. They showed their humanoids off. They showed their humanoid factory. And, we just got a tour of the new facility, and this is in Guangzhou. So Guangzhou is about an hour and a half north, high-speed rail train ride from Shenzhen. So
And
XPeng is a
that's
little bit by
China.
itself.
Just to stop you, that's sort of China's Silicon Valley, or one of them. There's more
Let's
than
say
one, I guess.
Guangzhou is on the outskirts,
Yeah.
because what they call Shenzhen is the Greater Bay Area, because there's a bay
Mhm.
between Hong Kong and Shenzhen.
Yeah.
So they generally call that the GBA, or the Greater Bay Area, with Guangzhou kind of be an extension of that a little bit. And then everything impressive, right? And they also wanted to highlight their VLA 2.0, which is their new platform for intelligent driving and artificial intelligence, and what they're incorporating into their vehicles now for their new system. And
Mhm.
the system is robust enough where it can integrate the eVTOL, it can integrate the humanoids into one system, okay? Whereas a lot of companies will use disparate systems to try to Frankenstein them together. But
Yeah.
we know that when you duct tape a bunch of different software together, there's a lot of bugs, or the potential for a lot of bugs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they really, really wanted to lean into that, or communicate
Mhm.
to us that
Mhm.
they're this new company. Okay.
Can I stop you just for 1 second there? So humanoid robots, Tesla talks about that, but they don't seem to have a fact. I mean, they're building the factory, but they don't have it up and running. I don't think Tesla talks a lot about, I call them flying cars, but eVTOLs, flying things, but other companies do. I mean, did you feel like, look, this is not just happy talk, that this company has the goods, that they have, a functioning factory to build humanoids, they have eVTOLs that actually work, or does it still sort of seem like beta, beta kind of stuff, or vaporous?
So that's an interesting question, Joe, because let me start by saying, do they have the ambition? And it was obvious from being down there, from
Hmm.
having all these international media and analysts and KOLs, because that wasn't cheap for them.
No,
Okay. And so they are willing and ready to openly communicate that this is who they are, this is their future. Okay. So that answers the ambition part. Now,
right.
part of it is, do they have the capital? Do they have the ability, management wise and technical capabilities to make this happen? One of the things that is a difference maker between XPeng and the rest of the companies that are playing in this technology space is that they demoed an eVTOL in their parking structure on their facility to everyone.
Mm.
So there's probably 4 bus loads, shifts of bus that moved everybody around at different points in time. And so they showed us the facility, the manufacturing facility where they're going to build these eVTOLs, where they're going to build that land aircraft carrier that fits in, that the eVTOL fits into the back of. They've told us they have
Oh,
thousands of orders for it, but we're a little bit iffy on pricing details. Okay. And we have to take eVTOL with a grain of salt because we know
yeah.
traditional FAA means that there are at least half a dozen approvals that need to be made if you're going to be flying something over a set, height or altitude. Okay. This is where the technology clearly leads the policy. And if I'm being frank and honest, this is more for export because China really controls its the air
Yeah.
quite
So,
tightly.
yeah, I mean, and not unlike the United States, as you said, the
Right.
FAA in the United States is pretty, and they have good reason to be. I mean, so these eVTOLs, these are for carrying people or for carrying packages, or maybe both. I'm just trying to get a sense of scale versus what people think of when they think drone.
So the eVTOL that they showed us a demo of fits 2 people, a pilot and
Okay,
another person.
so
But
it's
that
for
being
people.
said, that was a little bit performative. And again, this is a personal eVTOL because it comes with a land aircraft carrier, which is basically a Suburban on steroids with a covered pickup bed that the eVTOL folds into and fits into not quite neatly. Okay.
Hmm.
So, but part of the new headquarters was this huge hall once you enter the main building of electric vehicles with propellers. We're talking Joby type of eVTOLs as
Hmm.
well with
Hmm.
multiple propellers that could fit 4 to 6 people. Okay, so their ambitions are not insignificant. And,
Yeah.
the theme of we're a technology company, let me get back to that once we get to discussing the Beijing Auto Show, because it's really important how I see a lot of the differences between the Chinese and some of the companies that are trying to break into a lot of that stuff here and in the West in general is that the competition in China is intense, even in the eVTOL space. Okay.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
things need to happen. Things need to happen or you will be overtaken. And we always have to remember that there are 3 companies specifically that are traded in the US, one of them being XPeng. So it makes some sense for XPeng to want Western audiences
Oh,
to know
sure.
what it's
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
They need
Because
the
I would
capital, or they want the capital. They want the
exactly.
capital. Yeah.
I would argue that a disproportionate share of their valuation or their market cap is owned by Western investors. Okay. And so it's really important, even if they don't do business currently in the United States, that they communicate what their strategy is to Western investors. Okay. And so really impressive. Now, I'm with you. There are some head scratchers. Like, how do you make this all work together? Is there an Uber style app that Xpeng has that Xpeng services can either deliver me food, deliver me goods, deliver me via eVTOL, or deliver me via cybercab, an XPeng version, because they also talked about launching a cybercab. So again, XPeng is really, really, really communicating broad ambitions across different form factors of transportation and mobility. Underpinning a lot of that stuff is going to be the software, the VLA platform,
Right.
but also the silicon that they're designing, the Turing silicon that they're likely going to sell some of them to, or at least the IP, to Volkswagen in China, because Volkswagen owns 5% of XPeng. And so they're generating revenue. Again, we'll get back to that a little bit, because Volkswagen is licensing a platform from XPeng to build their latest, newest EREV and battery electric vehicles that were shown at Beijing Auto.
Let's hold that talk, because I do want to get you to talk about specifically the German automakers' relationships with China and the challenges they have there. But let's go to Beijing, and let's talk about kind of what you saw at the show, and then maybe we'll segue into some of the other issues like the Germans.
Okay, so let me frame this now, because Beijing used to be the smaller of the two shows. Let's call them the twins, the Beijing, Shanghai.
When I was going to those shows, Shanghai was the big boss, and Beijing was it was fun to go to Beijing, but it wasn't. You didn't get a sense that everyone was like going full out in Beijing. But something's changed. Anyway, go ahead. What did you see?
So, first of all, Beijing historically has been smaller. The convention center is smaller, but this year, over the last 2 years, Beijing decided, okay, yes, that convention center is smaller, so we're going to build another convention center right next to it. And they used both convention centers this year. And so there was a total, it went from 9 to 17 halls.
Oh my God.
And you were at the Detroit Auto Show.
Thinking about it.
Yeah. Oh man,
go ahead.
You were at the Detroit Auto Show, so I had to write this out. There's 380 square meters of space, floor space, versus 68,000 in Detroit. There were 1.28 million visitors this year over 10 days versus 275 in Detroit over 11. 65,000.
Go ahead. 1.2 plus million in Beijing, 200,000 in Detroit. Capital of the U.S. auto industry. Yeah. Okay.
There were 1,400 cars on display, 1,451 cars on display, 181 debuts, 71 concepts. There were 500 cars on display in Detroit. Okay. There were 219 press conferences. So it's not just the OEMs, it's the tier ones too that are doing press conferences.
Yeah. And the tech companies. Yeah.
And BYD and Chery had entire halls to themselves. The foreign automakers also participated in a fairly big to medium way. Volkswagen Group, Porsche, Cadillac, Ford, Peugeot, Citroen was there. Mercedes was there. BMW had a large presence. But yeah, and my friend Alex had posted on LinkedIn, I think an easy way to relate it to our audience, or some of our audience, the ones in Michigan. Think of the Detroit Auto Show from the late 90s when I was a kid. It was the coolest thing. GM employees, you could go into the employee center and get a free drink or something like that. And the GM booths, the Ford booths were extravagant. Okay. That's how it is. In their debuts,
and that is
their
not
unveils.
how it is. Yeah, that's not how it is in Detroit anymore. I remember working at the late 90s Detroit Auto Shows, and it's exactly as you say. It was opulent. Audi would bring over a chef from Germany to make, fancy sausages for breakfast at a kitchen they had there. Mercedes, BMW had these huge presences. Anyway, that's all gone, but it's still happening at the Chinese shows. And yeah.
It was one of the reasons I decided to get into automotive, because I was a high school, college age kid, And this was the coolest thing. Hey, you know what? I get access because my dad's an employee or my sister's an employee, so I get more benefits than the regular visitors here. That's a
Mhm.
cool thing. And it was exciting to be a part of the Detroit Auto Show in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's how it is. That's how it is in Beijing right now.
And that's what I remember when I would go, to those shows, and even in the 2000s before the pandemic, that actually had flipped, but from afar, and I want you to kinda comment on this. From afar, reading what you had to say live from the show, reading what other people were writing out of the show, my sense was that this Beijing show was very much underscoring the idea that, and I wrote this in last week's, rodeo, underscoring the idea that, look, we, China, the Chinese auto industry, we are the future. We own the future. The race is over. We've got this. And now, now we're going to sort out the details, and we're going to sort out, who among the dozens and dozens of Chinese companies that you talked about is going to kind of make it through certain gates. I got two things. One is I want to kind of ask you, in terms of the types of vehicles that you saw the Chinese putting forward, talk about that, because it seemed to me that there's two tracks going on in the Chinese business right now. I mean, not an electric versus combustion. Again, I think that's pretty well settled. We know the future is electric, connected, smart tech. But on the one hand, you hear a lot about cheap, 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 amazingly cheap Chinese cars. But on the other hand, I got the sense that the Chinese companies, or at least a number of them, were putting forward these pretty substantial, like 3-row US sized SUVs. And I wanted to talk about that because it does seem like there was kind of a message here. Like, if you just think we're cheap, tiny cars that have batteries, you're not getting it. Talk about
Oh
that.
man, Joe. As someone who, so I don't know if my garage would fit one, or but more importantly, my wife wouldn't want to drive it because it's so big. I'm a big fan of Tahoes. Do I think the interiors are kind of analog? Yes, I do. Do they need to be updated? Yes, they do. But you look at the Escalade IQ EV, it's a massive car.
Mhm,
And
mhm, mhm.
these Chinese large SUVs, and anytime you see an 8 or a 9 in the name, that's the flagship,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. Mhm.
And I had alluded to this a few months ago that some of these vehicles are huge. I had compared the size of a Neo ES9 to a Chevy Tahoe, height, width, length, almost the exact same, okay? Now, multiply that by a dozen, 14, 15 cars, okay? There's even a Wuling, which is the SAIC GM joint venture that is
Really?
a 3-row, $24,000 SUV, and Huawei is the supplier of the technology.
Ooh, interesting.
So, that vehicle is called the Hualing. Okay, so Google that when you get a chance. For the audience, if you get an opportunity, the Wuling Xingguang L, the Neo ES9, the Ito M9, the Li Auto L9 Livis, which is and to your point, there is the inexpensive, high value, low priced large SUVs now, and there are the premium, because what they're realizing is that this involution, this price war is just tearing them up from a mass market standpoint. So they're trying to
Mhm.
grab some margin on the more premium side. But
Yeah.
again, because of the intense competition that always seems to be in place in China, they know that they can't get sales if they price at 110,000 US dollars. There's just no way.
No.
And so the I'm talking levels of luxury that you wouldn't that that you'd be hard pressed to not see on a Rolls Royce.
So
Okay.
this seems like a good perfect segue to what I wanted to get you to talk about. The German luxury brands, and several of them, I think BMW reports tomorrow, but Mercedes, Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, the German automakers have reported their Q1 results, and they're not great. The financial results globally, not great. US sales under massive threat from Trump because he's having a tantrum again about the Germans and German politically. And he's threatening 25% tariffs. But let's set that aside for the moment and talk about what the German brands look like now in China. Because what you just told me about these SUVs and these luxury premium type vehicles tells me or suggests to me that if you're Audi, right, and you were used to being the Chinese party boss man's car of choice and feasting on that franchise for however many years, seems like one, that party's over politically, but two, that in terms of the product, if you're a German auto company trying to sell a premium SUV, premium sedan, you're in trouble in China because these competing vehicles are out there. I mean, what do you think about where they are? Because it seems like that's a really important kind of development for the industry as a whole.
So the European legacies, and I talked about Wuling, right? So GM
Mhm,
indirectly, they now know that their survival, and I'm not talking thriving, I'm just talking the relevance in the
mhm,
market in
mhm.
China specifically, is tied to local partnerships.
Yeah,
They cannot go it alone. You can look at Cariad for Volkswagen, who is reorged. I think it's a 5-year-old organization. I think it's reorged 5 or 6 times. Okay.
yeah, I've lost track, but yes, I'm aware.
And so I went to the Volkswagen brand booth specifically to look at the new vehicles that they're launching. So one of the vehicles is the ID Era 9. It's a US style large SUV. And Mercedes is struggling because they're kind of the odd man out. You know, they don't have a local partner for a lot of things. You know,
Mhm,
BMW is pinning its hope on Neue Klasse. They're kind
right.
of redo of a redo, but they're still pricing it pretty high because they want to. If you talk to Porsche, if you talk to these guys, they all want to protect margin, which means that sales volume is going down the tubes.
Double
Now,
digits, huh?
yeah, and
Just year over year. Forget about going back 2 or 3 years. If you do that, right, it's substantial decline.
so a prime example, and for those of you that are wondering, there's uh, a sales leader for premium, the Neo ES8. Okay, it's about the size of, let's say, a Tahoe, maybe a little bit shorter.
Mhm,
Okay, and it
mhm.
starts at $55,000. The second row captain's chairs recline, massage. There are foot rests. There's screens, $65,000, and it has the clear motion. The champagne glasses on the hood going
Oh,
over
yeah.
bumps. It has the clear motion suspension, and it battery swaps. But like, how can Mercedes compete against that? Compete with that? Because you, Joe, I know you've been in hundreds of vehicles. You'd be like, holy cow, the fit and finish, the premium feel, the
Mhm.
amenities. It's not even features, Joe. It's amenities, right?
Well,
I'm
yeah,
talking
and
next level.
yeah, and also, I mean, and I was talking with someone in the industry, today saying that the best of the Chinese companies, the ones that have the most robust partnerships with some of the mobile phone operators in China, have got, you're gonna talk about this, I know, but have got at least semi-automated driving and sort of awareness of the environment around the car. They are tied in to all the data that's coming from the mobile phone networks, which are, vast and omnipresent. And they're integrating that with software in ways that if you're in the West, you've just not seen. And you're right. I mean, it seems like these Western companies, um, are they're up against something really formidable now when it comes to the best of the Chinese companies in terms of
So,
tech integration and features and capability.
so I've been a busy man on the media front. A lot of media outlets have contacted me over the last couple of weeks, and I was able to cram a week back home in between trips to San Francisco and China. And I say
Mhm,
China because I was in Guangzhou, Beijing, and Shanghai. I
mhm,
spent one night in Huai'an in between So we took a car from Beijing to Shanghai, spent the night in Huai'an, and then drove the rest of the way to Shanghai, or rode the rest of the way. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But Joe, and this is specific to us being Michiganders, the future is happening in San Francisco and in China. And we're arguing about, I don't know what we're arguing about, to be honest with you, because the change I feel we need to make, these conversations, that we're not even having these conversations. You know, people are still asking me,
Yeah.
what about this and what about this? And it's just like, you know what? We're doing the best we can to inform everyone. But if we're not even talking about the relevant things or the things that are important, I just don't know. And again, this is Michigan. I'm not talking the United States. I'm talking Michigan specifically. Um, and the crazy thing is, we know really smart people, and we know that they're talking about it, but
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not being
sure.
talked about in the media. It's not being, and one of the things that I want to hammer home is that, and I'd love your take on this, because you have your ear, you have your sources, you talk to people. Back in the day, when disruption was happening, you would hear about arguments among management team members. You would hear knockdown, drag out. I'm not hearing that in, at GM. I'm not hearing that at Ford. We know Doug Field left, but like, if there's kumbaya moments happening at these companies, especially after they've written $20 billion write down checks, they're not disrupting themselves enough,
Yeah,
because you should be having knockdown, drag out automatic, and that should be kind of leaking out to the public,
yeah.
to the media. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
and just quickly, we'll come back. I want to hear about your road trip, but I'll just react to that. I mean, I don't doubt. I mean, and you do hear this, maybe more from, honestly, I've heard it more from suppliers than I've heard from OEMs, but I think the OEMs, the OEM executives, with the notable exception of Jim Farley at Ford, the OEM executives, have a different imperative, which is in the face of tariff cost disruption, the Iran war,
gas
Straits of
prices,
Hormuz gas price disruption. Yes, the $20+ billion write downs of EV programs that have been just tossed in the trash at enormous cost. There's an imperative or an incentive to try to send the message: look, everything is fine. The Q1 calls, especially from GM, but also to a certain extent from Ford, we're like, look, we've got this. We're getting our tariff refunds. Isn't that exciting? Well, here's the thing: the tariff refunds aren't going to offset the full cost of the tariffs that are going to still be there. So I do think that in the US, you had to sort of washing of the hands, dusting off of the EV program, upon a bubble, if you will. Well, so much for that. Screw it. We're going to invest in truck capacity, like GM spending, some close to $1 billion for a new generation of V8 engines, right? That seems to be the discussion. Is like, look, screw it. We're gonna figure out how to make money. We've lost all this money on EVs. We can't keep doing that. We're going to focus on what we know how to do, which is the tariff protected large pickup truck franchises. We're going to protect those, build those, profit from those, and we'll figure it out later. And I know that's oversimplifying. And I know, again, Jim Farley does talk about this a lot. Like, look, we know we have to compete with the Chinese, but you don't see the wholesale. I think what you're talking about, the wholesale, holy crap. I think you made I know you made an important point way back at the beginning of this conversation about how the people at XPeng live in an environment of hyper competition that's in their face every single day, right? When they go out and walk around and look in them, look outside the window, they know that Xiaomi and Geely and BYD and all these other companies in China are coming for them. So it's 996, right? Or 1010-8 or whatever the heck it is. They know that. And if you're in the Detroit, you think, well, heck, everything's fine. Except for the $4.99 a gallon gas, that sucks. But hey, pickup trucks are selling, except that, oops, oh, they're not. Anyway, so I do think that there's what you see out your window tends to affect how you think.
I agree. I agree.
Even if you are a highly informed, highly intelligent executive of a global company, you know better. But what you see out your window affects how you think. All right, enough of that detour, because now, and this again, although this is kind of relevant to the discussion, or is Israel about this discussion. Tell me more about this drive you took. It was a Neo, right?
It
It
was
was
a
a
Li Auto. Li
Oh,
Auto.
Li Auto, pardon me. Li tell me about this drive you took, because I saw some video you posted that could gotten you arrested here in the United States. Of you're sitting there with your hands off the wheel, chatting with your other podcast partner about this. You know, you're doing a podcast from behind the wheel, and you're not even you got your hands off the wheel. So
I'm paying
talk about
attention though.
this.
I'm paying attention though, Joe. I
Well,
am
sure
paying
you are.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah, of
So
course you are. Say that directly into the camera. But seriously, talk about that, because, I mean, we've in this country, it seems like FSD, the jury is kind of out yet. I mean, I know that a lot of Tesla people would say, no, the jury's not out, but, it's still not 100% there. I mean, there was just a month or so ago, the regulators at the NTSB had some really harsh words for Ford's Blue Cruise, hands-off system. What did you experience in China? What was it like?
So let me double click on a point you made just before, okay? Because we were talking about sales and things like that and the competition. Lei Jun, who's the CEO of Xiaomi, a billionaire, Li Ben, who's the CEO of NIO, a billionaire, and He Xiaopeng. So Lei Jun, he used his intelligent driving and live streamed it himself.
Hmm.
And these CEOs, they go online and live stream. Now, some of that is cultural, but
Hmm.
part of that is because of the competition, part of that because they care about their companies. But could you imagine Mary or Jim Farley live streaming behind the wheel as they're driving or utilizing their own technology? But
I,
this is the type
I,
of grassroots, you know?
I'll stick up for Jim Farley. I think Jim Farley would do it,
Yeah, I think Jim would do it.
because he's got a podcast.
He's out there. I appreciate
He's out
that.
there. I think he would do it. I'm not sure that Mary would do it. I'm not sure that. I don't. I mean, I think if she sees this and sees that I'm saying she wouldn't do it, she'll go do it just to prove me wrong, which would be a lot of fun. But yeah, but I hear you. Yeah, and look, and the other thing, just quickly, I mean, these CEOs in China, the people you refer to, these are people in what, their 40s?
Yeah, late
Yeah,
40s.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, part of that is, as you say,
And they
is
come from
generational and culture, and they came from that world. Yeah, they came from that world. So, but anyway, go ahead. So these guys are out there, promoting this
Yeah, so
themselves.
on Chinese social, they're super active. But let's go back to the Li Auto. So Lei and I, who again is the co-host of the China EVs and More podcast, my other one, he and I for 3 years now have borrowed a Chinese electric vehicle and used its current iteration of intelligent driving level 2 plus to drive us. Year one was from Beijing to Shenzhen over 3 days in a XPeng G9, which was their large SUV at the time. Year two last year was in a Neo ET5 Touring, so the small sedan station wagon version of it. And we only did battery swapping, but we used our NOP and leveled for about over 90% of the miles. And then this year was a Li Auto 6. So Li Auto started in the business selling EREVs or extended range electric vehicles. This is a battery
Remember.
electric. And Li Auto started in the battery electric game with a vehicle called the Mega, it's a huge vehicle that looks a bit like a wedge. Okay.
Mm.
And the technology that's packed in it is really, really amazing. But then now they have three SUVs, or they have three electric vehicles or BEVs, an i6 and an i8. So we took the smaller version, and we don't get paid. We've not signed any contracts to obligate us to say certain things. This is because we have great relationships. They let us borrow the cars. I mean, there are waivers that if we get into accidents, we're responsible.
Yeah,
But
it's your problem. Yeah,
nothing
but
like
but this is standard
yeah.
auto stuff. I mean, they do this with journalists all the time. So it's
And
nothing more
so,
than the usual thing.
to your point, Joe, for about an hour and a half, we recorded our podcast while it was driving us down the G2 highway from Beijing to Shanghai. And so, just for frame of reference, we had an iPhone suction cup to the ceiling or the roof that was looking at the back of our heads and out the window. And then we had an Osmo Pocket 3 suction cup to the front windshield looking at both of us. We're going to be dropping that in the next couple of days. I'm in the process of getting it edited, and it's uncut for the hour that we're on the road. It's uncut. And I cut between the two shots of us talking and then of the road. The highlights. So Li Auto is newish to the battery electric game. They have charging stations that they're installing up and down the major thoroughfares of China. And the most major thoroughfare is the Beijing to Shanghai.
Sure.
Think of that as like an I-5. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We stopped 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers in to recharge because we picked up the vehicle. It wasn't fully charged. And they have 5C. So in order to explain what C is, 1C is the car fully charges in 60 minutes. 2C is the car fully charges in 30 minutes. 3C is the car fully charges in 20 minutes. So you understand now. 4C is 15 minutes. So so you don't have to know the size of the battery. You just say 4C, 5C, whatever. So we stopped at a 5C charger, and currently Tesla superchargers in the United States can hit up to maybe 300. Okay. But it's not a consistent 300. It'll get to 300 and then it'll slow down quite significantly over the curve. Okay.
Yeah.
When we pulled in, we specifically looked for a 4C charger or a 5C charger. Okay.
5C.
So we found one, and it's differentiated because it's gold versus the silver that the other chargers are. And
like that.
So anyways, so
that's a nice touch. Yeah.
We were 16% and charged. We went to it was a rest stop effectively, and I got some food. Lay forgot something, so he went to grab it in the car after we had already plugged in for a few minutes because we did a bio break, and I'm like, oh, we have time. I'm just going to get something to eat. And so Lay comes back after he grabs his tea bottle from the car, and he's like, I pulled the car up, and I'm like, what? He's like, oh, it was done by the time I walked back to the car.
Wow.
So I turned it off and parked it. I had just sat down because I bought my food. And it couldn't have been more than 12 or 14 minutes.
So that's effectively gas station parody, right?
I felt rushed to eat. I felt rushed.
You're right. It's even worse. Yeah. Yeah. You're like, damn, I just bought this food. Yeah. Yeah.
So Joe, it got to 420 kilowatts. It was pulling 420 kilowatts. And I bring that up because both BYD and CATL said, that's too slow. So BYD has a 10C charger. And CATL now is rolling out a 12C charger.
Yeah. So, but okay. So, and one, back to the point about what you see out your window affects your competitive clock speed, right? There's that. Two, and I said this just a minute ago, but I want to double down on it. One of the things, and look, this is something almost everybody looks at EVs says, but I think it's a super salient. One of the big inhibitors to EV adoption is charging time, right? I have done the thing of sitting out in, some godforsaken parking lot, with the only food options being, this is in West Michigan, the only food options being a Dunkin' Donuts or some gas station that said they had chicken. And, it was pretty easy. Dunkin' Donuts, because you don't know.
Cooked by the gasoline that you could taste when you're eating it.
Cooked by the attendant, right. And you go on Google Maps and you see no reviews for the chicken. None. You're like, okay, so this is an easy choice. We're going to go have a donut at 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night. Point being, we had to sit there for 45 minutes. And I think it's a huge inhibitor to people adopting EVs. If the Chinese companies and Chinese battery makers, Chinese automakers are now putting on the market in the marketplace for real vehicles that do what you just described, which is basically, refueling parity, refueling time parity with pretty much not quite equivalent range, but good enough, right? I mean, 300, 400 kilometers, right? Something like, or more.
I think this car was
More.
600 and
Yeah,
change.
600. So 600. So like 300
So
miles,
300 and change
300
range.
miles ish.
Miles.
Yeah. Which you're going to stop anyway, right? Because biology is biology. And the older you get, the more that becomes apparent. But if the Chinese auto companies are erasing charge time inequality, charge time, achieve charge time fueling parity, they've effectively achieved range parity. Now, two of the biggest inhibitors to mass market EV adoption are gone. I mean, there may be some others. Maybe you just don't like an EV. Maybe like me, you tow a trailer. That's a whole different podcast. You don't have to go there. But the point is, for most people who aren't towing a trailer, you fix those two things, and that's what's happened, right? I mean, you see that happening in China. I mean, what's the EV
And
share in China? 60+% now, something like that?
yeah, it's well over 50. The thing that I want to stress as well, Joe, because you summarized it very well, is that these companies are still not resting on their laurels, whether it's because of the domestic competition. I'd mentioned earlier that CATL had a little private event, and it was at the Mandarin Oriental called the Mobar. And there was a deck that overlooked the Forbidden City. Beautiful,
Hmm.
beautiful, beautiful
Hmm.
deck. And Steve Levine was there. Henry Sanderson from Volt
Hmm.
Rush
Hmm.
used to work at Benchmark Minerals. He was there. A few
Right.
other analysts and journalists, and there was 3 or 4 executives. And Chatham House rules. Lay had asked one of the executives. He's like, "How much faster?" Meaning, how much faster do you need to make charging? And we all, after he said this, we all just openly laughed. He said, "What is your requirement?"
Well, yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, my requirement would be I don't want to feel like the darn car is going to blow up, right? I mean, there are some laws of physics issues that get into this, right? You got,
Sure.
heat and so on. I mean, I don't want you to violate the laws of physics. If you get it under 10 minutes, I'm in. I mean, when I go to a gas station with my, incredibly archaic Jeep Grand Cherokee, the more you talk about China, the more my vehicle feels like complete, pterodactyl. Oh, when I go to a gas station with the Grand Cherokee and I have to stand there, with the gas pump, right? I'm not supposed to walk away, and I don't because I know you're not supposed to. I'm sitting there for 5, 6 minutes to fill up the tank from, less than a quarter, and then, I gotta take my bio break, and I gotta go, get a cup of coffee or, whatever terrible thing I got on the roller grill inside the gas station or whatever. That's a 10-minute process, right? You know, I could make it faster if I wanted to, but really it's at least 10 minutes. And if I'm at a Bucky's, it's even more. You get it under 10 minutes and I have no more complaints. I'm not sitting there griping about, "Oh, I gotta go park my butt in some cheesy gas station chicken shop for 45 minutes, staring at the wall." No, 10 minutes, I'm in. That's all I need.
And I think what's really important is that potentially the downside to what you're talking about is that this hyper competition, maybe it does reduce the quality and reliability over a long period of time of these battery packs. No, we'll know over a number of years. But the other thing too is that one of the unique situations for us as Michiganders is that it gets really cold in the wintertime. BYD at their booth had a chamber with a car in it, a guy dressed as an Eskimo, like head to toe. It was minus 30. And an example of that was he had a pitcher of hot water, and he threw it into the air, it turned into little ice particles. So he charged his vehicle, and you just saw this thing just fly. And I have to emphasize the fact that the BYDs and the CATLs have really pulled in EV adoption by decades. and I'm talking into the emerging markets, not the mature markets, into the emerging markets. Now, with the BYD, they also have plug-in hybrids. So
Right.
people talk about, well, BEVs can't do this, BEVs can't do that. You know what? BYD doesn't care. We have these
Yeah.
flavors.
Let's say a hybrid.
And
Yeah.
if people want to, if Western audiences want to argue about the EREV stuff, well, they need to argue with Dodge then. They need to argue with F-150 and Ford because that's where they're moving to. Okay, so this
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
the Chinese technology only works in China. No, everyone else is also
No.
adopting it.
No. You're right. And we're going to kind of wrap us up here as we're getting close to an hour. But that's another thing. I mean, and maybe this is kind of a vibe under the surface thing as opposed to an explicit thing. But one of the other messages I got from the Beijing show, and again from things you said when you were there, and other people wrote, was that right, the idea that the Chinese automakers are doing all of this just for the Chinese market, that's out the window. I mean, they're absolutely doing it for export markets. And I mean, first of all, exports are where their growth is right now, right, as opposed to the domestic market. But the other thing, and I just have
And let me double click on that real quick. BYD's 8 months of sales losses in the China market.
in China, yeah, their growth is
China.
entirely outside, right? And you see EV sales going up in Europe. This is the thing that, I mean, I think a lot of people read what U.S. or U.S./Anglophone media, online media, print media, if there's any of that left, had to say about all these vehicles that you've just been talking about. Anybody who cares about transportation or cars or is interested in cars knows what's going on. When anybody in the United States knows what's going on, it's not some secret. And I do wonder, if the U.S. market kind of does a circle back toward V8 in the front, rear drive in the back, kind of technology, whether a significant chunk of the would-be buyer community is going to say, wait a minute, we know that there are cooler, cleaner, or better equipped, better technology, more relevant technology. We know those vehicles exist. Why can't we have them? Or, hey, I'm an American who does not make 120,000 or more, or $150,000 a year. I make 50. I need a vehicle I can afford. Wait a minute, I know they're there. They're out. I can if I live in Detroit, they're in Canada. If I live in El Paso, I see them in Mexico. Why can't we have that? So I just wonder, and it does seem like the Chinese automakers are, all the stuff they did for you, the parties, the show and tell. They know where you live. They know who your audience is. They know who my audience is. They're like, keep talking. It's not like they're just doing it for themselves.
And to hammer that home, Joe, there are only 2 markets for large SUVs.
That's right. And we're one of them.
And so, and here's an anecdote. I fly home on Friday, get home at noon. 4 hours later, I'm in a car driving to Indianapolis with my son to his lacrosse tournament. And of course, he's in the passenger seat. And I'm like, okay, we need to get gas. Find me a Costco. So, now the challenge is on the gas side too, because we want affordable gas. And it's
Yeah,
not
right.
like
Absolutely.
we could have stopped at any gas station, so there's equivalent challenges on the ICE side now with gas prices going so high. And I want to emphasize that. And then, the last thing is that with Slotkin and Moreno talking about restricting Chinese vehicles, I don't know how that's going to go. Okay. But if that succeeds, what now? It can't be, that's it. Because that seals the fate of the U.S. automakers to becoming regional players and losing their global status. Because there needs to be something else after that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I would argue that I can root my opinion in history. When the U.S. automakers in the 90s convinced Ronald Reagan to impose quotas on Japanese cars because they were getting clobbered by fuel efficient Japanese cars in an environment of energy volatility, they, not entirely but to a considerable degree, took a great big deep breath rested secure in the knowledge that they call them the VRAs, the voluntary voluntary restraint agreement, would shelter them from Toyota and Honda. And we all know how that story turned out, right? There was no sheltering. And in the 90s, there was a reckoning. And then, or later on, there are more reckonings to come. You might argue there's still a reckoning going on because Toyota keeps investing. But the idea that you're going to keep a better product out of the hands of the American consumer by saying you can't have that has a bad history. It's a bad history. Doesn't work.
What's more un-American than that?
Right, right. We want right, and yeah, that's the problem. And there's an economist or a public intellectual thinker with the Brookings Institution, Clifford Winston, wrote a very long piece in the New York Times. I cited it in last week's, not this most recent, but the last week's rodeo, high speed rodeo. Wrote a very long piece basically saying, new vehicles are unaffordable to working and average income American families. That is wrong. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but this is, I think, the fair gist of what he said. That is wrong. And, and if American companies or Western companies won't, deliver clean, affordable transportation, and by that he means affordable electric vehicles, then we should let the Chinese companies come and sell their vehicles here so that, people can have affordable, safe, reliable transportation. Now he's one guy, but they billboarded his opinion and his view in the New York Times, which is the daily Bible of the East Coast establishment. So I think you're going to see more of that, and I think back to what you saw in Beijing. The fact that they're building these U.S.-sized SUVs, I don't think that's some accident, right? That's just some brain fart they had at Li Auto or Neo. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Let me end on this note. Speaking to some insiders, BYD is set to complete homologation for the Canada market before the end of this year, and Geely right around the corner, beginning of next. And so you're already starting to see M plates of Chinese vehicles in Canada because
Mhm.
I don't want to say bombarded, but I get direct messages on X and all these other social media websites. Hey, man, check this out. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think it's great. Because I'm just an advocate for affordable transportation, clean energy, preferably. You and I know we're torn a little bit because we are from Michigan. A lot of people, really good friends of ours are likely going to be affected negatively because
Yeah.
of Chinese entry into the United States.
Yeah. No, no, there's, you can be an analyst of what is or should happen in the market. And then I still put a, different hat on as a resident of Southeast Michigan and say, boy, I sure hope that doesn't turn out that way. It wouldn't be good for the people, people I know, wouldn't be good for our communities. So yeah, that's tough. Let's hope we get it right.
I feel like we haven't even really scratched the surface because I was at the auto show for 2 days. I try to avoid the public days because now there's kids and families and I can't get around. And so 20,000 steps each day. Had my own party and in Beijing, the after party. It was a great turnout. Companies like BYD, Ito, Cadillac had people there. The Economist was there. CNBC was there. So we'll have another one in Shanghai next year, even bigger and better. And Joe, maybe you'll come.
Yeah.
And we can have
I think let's put it this way. I mean, I knew this, but now I really feel this way. If I can get myself back to a Chinese auto show, I'm gonna put that on my list of things to do.
We can arrange that.
We can make that work.
I'm sure I can arrange that.
I think we can make that work. Look, all right.
Hey, this was a great summary, but I think we'll be talking about this show or outcome from the show throughout the rest of this year. I am certain of it.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's a start, not a finish. And welcome back. Thanks for doing most of the talking this week. And everyone, we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.